Welcome back. We are going to work on multiplying with complex numbers with exponents or foiling in this case also. Okay, let's look at number 19. We have negative 4i all in parentheses with a squared term. So what that means is I've got a negative 4i times itself another negative 4i. Well, negative 4 times negative 4 is going to give me positive 16, and then I times I is going to give me I squared. Well, I squared, we know from the pattern of I, is negative 1. So I've got 16 times negative 1, or negative 16 is my final answer. Okay, let's do one where we actually have to multiply two complex numbers together. So we've got 9 minus 7i times negative 6 minus 5i. So this is just like a polynomial where we're going to FOIL it. So we do first, which is negative 54, outer, which is negative 45i, inner, which is positive 42i, and then last is positive 35, and then I times I is I squared. So you're going to end up with a real number and then two imaginaries, and then you've got another one down here that's got an I squared. Now let's simplify these. Well, we know that I squared is negative 1. So this 35 is actually negative 35 when I multiply positive 35 times negative 1. So I can combine the real answers or the real numbers. So that's going to be what? Negative 89, and then I have negative 45i and a positive 42i, so that's minus 3i. And that's my final answer there. Okay, let's look at one where we're dividing. Okay, we've got 4 plus I, all divided by 5i. Okay, we can't leave an I in the denominator because I is a square root of negative 1 and no radical can be in the denominator. So let's multiply this by another negative I. Because what will happen is I get rid of my i's by multiplying by an I, because that'll give me I squared, but I want it to be the opposite sign, so I end up with a positive in the denominator, and you'll see why in a second. Okay, let's multiply the denominator. 5i times negative I is negative 5i squared. Well, we know I squared is negative 1, so let's replace that with negative 1, and we end up with a positive 5. So by multiplying by negative I, I'm getting a positive denominator, which is what I want. Then on top, I have to distribute, so I end up with negative 4i minus I squared. And again, we need to simplify that I squared. I squared is negative 1, so minus this negative 1 ends up being plus 1. So now let's get it in the correct form. I'm going to have to go over here and write the final answer. 1, because my real numbers first, minus 4i, all over 5, and then you need to split that into two parts. So I have 1/5 minus 4/5 I, and that's that final answer. So that's how you multiply and clear the denominator. The other type that you might need to learn how to clear is how to clear one like this, which is a full complex number, and you have to multiply by a conjugate. So let's multiply this one by 2 minus 2i. So a conjugate is the same complex number just with the opposite sign on I. When I FOIL that, I'm going to end up with 2 squared, which is 4, and then the outer is going to give me minus 4i squared. So I'm going to end up with 8 in my denominator because that's a negative 1. Then the numerator, I actually have to FOIL that whole thing out the long way. So I'm going to do first, which is 4, outer, which is negative 8i, inner, negative 4i, another inner, negative 4i, and last is positive 4i squared. Well, 4 and the plus 4i squared, remember that I squared is negative 1, so that's really negative 4, so 4 minus 4 is 0, and then I have a negative 4i minus 4i, that's going to give me negative 8i, so I have negative 8i over 8, and my 8's cancel, I'm left with negative I. Okay, often it will not come down to just this simple of an answer. Usually you'll have a complex number, or it might look like this, where you have an a+bi form. But there you go. This one simplified down to something really nice, negative I. Hope this video was helpful.